I am 32 years old and I am a man. At the age of 19, I committed an act that I still deeply regret. I was unfaithful to my girlfriend, realizing the baseness of my actions. After my ex found out about the affair, she decided to share this information with my parents. After finding out what happened, my parents were extremely disappointed and made the decision to tell me everything they thought and then kicked me out of the house. I tried to convince them to give me another chance, but they were adamant, saying they wanted nothing more to do with me. In desperation, I told them that I had nowhere else to go, to which they replied that it was time for me to become independent and solve my problems on my own. At that moment, a friend, a 34-year-old man who was 2 years older than me at the time, came into my life and he offered me shelter. I felt grateful for my friend's support, but still felt bitter that my family had rejected me. Thoughts of suicide clouded my mind, but the presence of my friend, who had become my support, kept me from taking extreme measures. He convinced me to focus on those around me and those who valued me, which eventually helped me start a new chapter in my life. This man has not just become close to me. We married 4 years ago, and he has become my husband and my rock, for which I am immensely grateful. 3 days ago, an unexpected event occurred. My sister-in-law came with news that should have been a pleasant surprise. She revealed that she had been in touch with my sister for 7 years, wanting to keep an eye on my life. According to her, my family had expressed a desire to reunite with me. This news left me feeling betrayed and confused. Not understanding why exactly now they had decided to pursue a relationship added to the pain. The frustration intensified when I learned of the long years of silence from my sister-in-law. Her rebukes to me about forgiving the family and letting go of grudges provoked a heated argument that caused my husband to chase her out of the house. Soon after she left, I started receiving messages from my siblings, begging for a conversation. Seeing no reason to do so after so many years of silence, I decided to block them. The conflict came to a head when my husband sided with his sister, emphasizing that although her methods were wrong, her intentions were pure. He felt that I had to forgive my family. This only added to my feelings of frustration, and I reminded him that the family had plenty of time to reconnect, but they had missed their chance. I explained to him that I had accepted their absence from my life and felt quite satisfied with it. He replied that holding on to anger was wrong and that I should try to forgive them, clarifying that forgiveness should be sought for my own sake so that I could move on with my life. These words deeply affected me, causing a flash of anger. I exclaimed that after their decision to push me out, they had forfeited the right to consider me part of the family. I reminded him that he had been my only support during those difficult times, and his call for forgiveness seemed harsher than the family's actions. He apologized, explaining that he did not mean to disregard my feelings, but only wished for my well-being. This happened 3 days ago, and my sister-in-law continues to try to arrange our meeting with the family. I have been forced to block her number while my husband continues to receive messages from her apologizing for her actions, but also not missing the opportunity to reiterate that I should meet with my family. She even sent pictures of my nephews that I didn't know existed, claiming that I was losing my chance to be an uncle to them. You were accused of cheating and decided to be excluded from the social circle. As a result, they excluded you and chose to cut off all contact. However, they decided to keep in touch with your sister-in-law, seeing her as a convenient source of information. Despite the past 7 years, there was no sincere remorse in their attitude towards you. During this time, they always knew where you were and apparently even had your contact details. Now a need has arisen for help for a sick or elderly relative, which may be causing them to reconsider their attitude. The family may wish to put the past behind them and forget the pain caused, but this does not rule out ulterior motives. Nevertheless, the person seeks to restore the relationship, hoping for forgiveness. At this time, there is an unexpected need for an organ donor or child care assistance in the family, which adds to the irony of the situation. Next story. My daughter, Ella, transitioned to middle school last year. Since she was informed of an upcoming field trip to Orlando, my husband and I, realizing the significance of the event, decided that Ella would have to cover half of its cost if she wanted to participate. Ella accepted the challenge readily and began earning money by caring for her younger siblings, including a kindergarten boy and his twin sister, receiving $22 per hour for her services. On days when my husband and I could stay home, we took over the care of the children, but if circumstances forced us both to leave, we raised the rate to $25 per hour to Ella, while never leaving her with the children for more than 2 hours. With the help of relatives who contributed, Ella offered to help them around the house in exchange for extra pay, and with the savings we already had, Ella was able to earn a substantial amount of money. We were endlessly proud of her hard work and repeatedly expressed our admiration for her. The plan was to register Ella for the trip, but the situation changed dramatically when I became aware this week that Ella had been aggressive toward a classmate who suffers from a mental illness. She had written hurtful notes and left them in the girl's bag, spread derogatory rumors, and posted offensive material online. It was extremely painful to hear about. I had always taught Ella to be respectful and kind to everyone, not noticing the slightest signs of such behavior in her actions. And now, after all these years, to learn that my daughter could so offend her peer was shocking. As punishment, Ella was suspended from school, but the measure was quite mild. The school motto states no bullying, but the reaction to Ella's actions seemed too mild to me, as if she had only received a small warning. I have a hard time accepting this, as it seems that more serious action is needed. The girl who was the object of Ella's ridicule is also part of the group traveling to Orlando. I wondered about the fairness of allowing Ella to participate in a trip that she has earned by spending a lot of time and effort. Refusing the trip seems like a possible punishment to me, even though Ella loves to read and doesn't talk to her friends on the phone much. I'm having a hard time deciding which punishment to choose. Depriving her of her books and encouraging more socializing with friends didn't seem quite right to me. The trip might have been a good lesson, but my husband and a close friend don't share this view, believing that punishment for Ella's actions shouldn't apply to the trip since she worked hard to earn it. I understand their arguments and agree to keep Ella her hard-earned money, but I have decided that I will not allow her to go. My fears that the girl might face bullying again on the trip have taken over. I wondered if I was making a mistake by not allowing Ella to participate in a trip she had worked so hard for and paid for in full. It's not your fault what's happening. She took the initiative by raising funds for the trip with the group. However, by being the perpetrator of bullying another child, she was faced with accepting the consequences of her actions. These two aspects are not mutually exclusive, but confirm the interconnectedness of cause and effect. The punishment of being deprived of the opportunity to participate in a long-awaited trip seems adequate. The trip, although long planned, remains a privilege rather than an unconditional right. There has also been a loss of confidence in her ability to behave appropriately in the absence of supervision. This raises doubts about her ability to provide emotional safety not only for herself, but also for others during the trip. This approach to problem solving is not supported by all parents, which is unfortunate. Refusal to participate in the trip serves as a guarantee of emotional comfort for all involved. However, safety and relationship issues are not just limited to travel time. There is a danger that such a decision may exacerbate the bullying situation. It is important to strike a balance between punishment and opportunity for correction to prevent possible vengeful behavior in the future. It may be worth considering participating in the trip as a chaperone if the teachers allow it. This may be a way to convey to your daughter the importance of taking responsibility for her actions without denying her the opportunity to learn and correct herself. Close supervision during the trip will emphasize the seriousness of the consequences of her actions, showing that trust is a value that must be earned. She has earned the right to participate in the trip by raising the necessary funds, but she has also earned direct supervision because of her actions. Ultimately, the parenting approach should promote self-esteem by not placing your daughter above or below others based solely on her accomplishments or mistakes. Now I want to tell a different story. My in-laws on my husband's side expressed displeasure at the effect I had on the feelings and reputation of my son-in-law, Chris, in his circle of close friends. At the age of 38, Chris, having been single for almost 3 years, found it difficult to find companionship. He approached me with a request to help him meet women, however, I refused his request. His attempts at dating, particularly with my friend Grace, a 35-year-old woman, had been unsuccessful due to his known fickleness in relationships and lack of physical attraction on her part. During a recent small party we threw in honor of my husband's long-awaited promotion, Chris attempted to flirt with Grace. His persistence only resulted in Grace eventually making it very clear in very clear terms that she not only found him physically unattractive, but also pointed out his character flaws. These words were said in private so as not to mar the evening for the rest of the guests. However, After the party, as my husband and I were trying to deal with the aftermath of the fun evening, my in-laws contacted me out of the blue. They expressed their disapproval of my actions, claiming that I had caused pain and embarrassment to Chris, which was confirmed by several minutes of loud rebukes over the phone. I reminded my husband that it was his responsibility to take care of his family. While my husband was having a discussion with his parents, I decided to review our surveillance tapes. These tapes showed Grace expressing her opinions to Chris with particular fervor. She reminded him of his betrayal and divorce from his late ex-wife Lily during her battle with cancer. Chris, she said, had been abandoned by his mistress for similar acts of deceit. Grace didn't mince words in pointing out his lack of value except for some money in his bank account. She noted that she could not support his illusions of grandeur and outward beauty, adding that his only desire was for his overrated position in corporate management, which she believed was doomed to failure. As parting advice, Grace suggested that Chris take care of his appearance through cosmetic procedures and seek divine intervention to correct his inner world, doubting the ability of psychotherapy to bring about noticeable change. This incident displeased my relatives and Chris, who argued that I should not have shared this information with my friends. They claimed that he was now perceived as an unpleasant person. I, however, responded that the truth of his actions would have eventually become known to everyone without my intervention. I then shared what had happened with a coworker named Natasha, who thought my actions were cruel. She remarked that Chris had changed significantly over the past 2 years and didn't deserve to be known for his worst mistake. Natasha, who knows Chris through a mutual friend, expressed her opinion based on her personal knowledge of him. It is important to note that I only discussed Chris's behavior among close friends, 6 people in total, half of whom were acquainted with Lily and already knew about these events. Thus, my account was limited to a small circle of people rather than extended to the entire community. The question of how truth can be perceived as injustice seems paradoxical. After all, the problem we face comes from Chris's behavior, not from someone else's accusations. Having raised the issue of protecting friends from potentially unwanted relationships, especially when Chris's unreliability is known, it seems reasonable not to hide the truth. The decision to share information seems especially reasonable given that relatives, despite being aware of the situation, choose to ignore it. The situation in which Chris, a 38-year-old man, turns to his parents because of failures in his personal life emphasizes his dependence on their support. His failures in establishing relationships are ironic given his unwillingness to accept rejections and learn from his mistakes. The sarcasm regarding his desired attractiveness and the inability of women to resist his charms only emphasizes the absurdity of his expectations. Treating Chris as someone who does not take a direct no and requires rejection with a special zeal to get his point across calls into question his capacity for self-reflection and self-respect. In this context, his relatives' attempts to protect him from the negative consequences of his own actions seem less supportive than complicit in avoiding responsibility. The advice to seek Natasha's help in meeting women emphasizes that Chris may not be fully aware of the extent of his problems with reputation and interaction. Natasha seems to see the potential for change in him, which offers him a chance to improve if he is willing to take the opportunity. In this situation, relatives seeking to protect Chris from the consequences of his actions find it difficult to accept the unpleasant truth. However, avoiding reality does not contribute to the resolution of the problem, but rather exacerbates it by postponing the need to face his own mistakes and their consequences. My next story. 7 years ago, my father had married Jane and soon became actively involved in the life of her daughter, Amy. At the same time, I, on the cusp of adolescence, felt sidelined. Up to that point, my life had not been easy. I faced challenges at every turn. 2 years ago, I lost my mother, which was an ordeal for me. In addition, I suffered a brain injury, which caused me to lose many of my memories of my mom. During my recovery, Dad turned his attention more and more to Jane. This was difficult for me. Over time, however, Dad found a rapport with Amy and paid more attention to her. He preferred to spend time with her, more than he did with me, sharing hobbies that were dear to him. He took her to places he had a special affection for, places I had dreamed of visiting but had never been there with him. He shared secrets and experiences with her that he did not share with me. A feeling of jealousy encompassed me, hurting me. I tried to express my experiences to my father. However, he pointed out my selfishness in wanting to keep his attention solely for myself. Leaving Amy without fatherly support, in his opinion, would be wrong. He also shared a story about Amy's father who refused to be involved. Therefore, he felt it was his responsibility to fulfill his role as a father to her. Amy asked me to reconcile with the idea that her father had more sympathy for her. Aware of the circumstances, my father remained indifferent to the way communication between us went. Even when we were doing things I enjoyed, his attitude was expressed in the fact that the time spent with me seemed to him to be an excessive burden. At times, he would fall asleep during our meetings, often losing concentration and leaving me alone to pursue my interests despite his physical presence with me. My grandfather, noticing the lack of warmth between my father and me, began to pay more attention to me. He tried to build a close bond with me that had not previously existed between us. Even though my father was not particularly close to his father, my grandfather became a true friend to me. He even showed affection for my mom and sadly recalled the moment of their divorce. By telling me stories about my mom and me that I no longer remembered, Grandpa helped me through the pain of my father's lack of attention. My father, seeing our closeness with Grandpa, felt jealous. Recently, he expressed his displeasure, saying that I was ignoring him and spending too much time with Grandpa. He wondered why I had stopped striving to socialize with him. I explained that his obvious preference for spending time with Amy and his reluctance to socialize with me had caused me to seek company where I felt welcome. He accused me of imposing my preference for his grandfather on him, to which I responded by accusing him of hypocrisy for preferring Amy and sharing things with her that he never shared with me. It wasn't fair, and I didn't hesitate to express it. He called me selfish for expressing my feelings. I emphasized that Amy knew him better and it wasn't my fault. I pointed out that he himself had allowed this situation to develop and had given Amy the opportunity to clearly demonstrate her superiority. He chose to walk away from the conversation. Yesterday, my father suggested family therapy, completely out of the blue, claiming it was the only way out. I countered that therapy wouldn't solve our problems if he couldn't even spend time with me to talk. He pointed out my supposedly lost willingness to mend the relationship, but I felt left out and misunderstood. You're not wrong about your feelings. Your father seems to expect you to pursue the relationship despite his apparent reluctance to put effort into it. He assumes that you should take the trouble to keep in touch while he himself is inactive. This is unfair. In truth, this state of affairs may have been convenient for him because he gets your attention when it suits him, without worrying about the permanence of his presence in your life. Therapy isn't just a way to fix your current relationship. It can help you build strong foundations for future relationships. Your mom passed away when you were very young, and due to a brain injury, you lost memories of the time you spent together. Now that your relationship with your father has become increasingly strained and you have found a soulmate who surrounds you with love, your father is starting to feel jealous. These accumulated issues may continue to interfere with your peace of mind, and therapy will offer you a safe space to address them. With most sincere wishes.